Hello everyone, Lytro Storm here, and today we're going to be continuing What If Kenny Survived with Part 4, continuing off where we left off last time in Season 4, Episode 2. If you haven't already seen the first 3 parts, they're going to be linked in the description and the comments section, so be sure to check them out. Last time we covered Episode 1 of Season 4 and also a little bit of Episode 2. And so now we are just going to continue where we left off, so, as always, be sure to like the video if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new, and join my Discord and follow me on Twitter. Links in the description. Now when we last left off, Kenny, AJ, and Clem were all leaving the school when they got jumped by Abel and his partner, Lily. So let's continue from where we left off. Lily then takes another look at Kenny, stating that that's who he must be. Lily tells Clem that she was in her group before, and she might not remember her. Clem then responds as she does in the game. Lily looked at Kenny and said that she noticed Lee wasn't with them. Then, depending on whether or not Lee helped kill Larry in the first season, she will ask how Lee died but someone like Kenny survived, or how Kenny didn't end up dead along with him. I'm sure you can guess which is which. Kenny and Clem are both angered by this and tell her not to talk about him like that. Lily then explains the Delta and her situation, and that she needs more people to fight the war. And someone like Kenny might actually be useful so long as he stays in line. Clementine can choose a few unique dialogue options here. The first option would be to say that Lily is as crazy as ever, bringing up how she killed Doug or Carly. Lily will say that she was trying to help her people survive then, and she's trying to help her people survive now, even if she regrets her decisions. Her second option would be to say that they can all just leave, to which Lily will decline, saying that her people come before previous connections. The third option would be Clementine telling Lily that it isn't too late and she could join them. They're all that's left of the original group, but Lily denies this, saying that they disowned her long ago. Staying silent will just result in a typical argument between Kenny and Lily in place of Clementine's dialogue. No matter what, Lily will begin to force them to leave, and that's when Lewis and Violet show up in the bushes. Here you are presented with the same options as in canon. Tell Violet to run or shoot. If you tell her to run, then they will, and Lily and Abel will both be distracted, so Kenny will hit Abel while you hit Lily. The three of you will then run away, and instead of AJ getting shot, I'd say Kenny gets shot instead, since he would be running behind you two in case they got shot, which they did. If you tell Violet to shoot, then Lily will get shot, Lewis will get shot, and then Kenny will get shot. All three of you escape, and eventually come across the walkers. However, Kenny, having been shot in the leg, is not going to be much help against them. Clem and AJ begin trying to clear the area when they find James, and get led away to safety. James agrees to try and help Kenny's wound. He cauterizes it while Clem and AJ hold him and cover his mouth. A walker comes by, and James still tells Clem to distract it, and you choose whether or not you do. When they come back to the school, Clem is still exhausted from trying to help Kenny walk so that they move faster. However, because of the lack of AJ's wound, the group is not as accepting of their return. Not that most of them were anyway, but the ones who were are now less so. Sure, Kenny is injured, but a grown man versus a child's injury is obviously a massive difference. Lewis is especially uncaring if you had Violet shoot Lily, which got him shot as well. Ruby tries to heal Kenny's wound, and AJ accompanies Clem when talking to Violet. She says that she's glad they all survived, but before this, if Lewis was shot, she will say that they nearly got Lewis killed. The two talk about Lily and the chance she will attack the school. Ruby and Mitch then go with Clem and AJ to find supplies in the greenhouse. They find Miss Martin as a walker and decide to either bury her or burn it. Choosing to burn it with Mitch will make Ruby genuinely hate you, whereas she was just kinda angry in canon. The same goes for burying her with Ruby, only here Mitch's hatred burns brighter than in canon, as he had already disliked Clem. This causes either Ruby to stop working on Kenny, or Mitch to tell Violet off about having them stay. If you'd stayed silent, AJ will say something determinate on your choice in the first episode. If you told AJ not to pay his respects to Sophie and Minnie with Violet and 10, he will say that they should burn it. However, if you chose to pay respects, then he will say to bury her like everyone else who died. Whatever he chooses will still result in Mitch or Ruby's hatred toward the two. 2 weeks later, and Kenny is either slightly fazed by his wound or has recovered depending on Ruby's feelings toward you. Like I said, she will stop treating Kenny if you burn Miss Martin. As for Mitch, if he hates you, then some of the group will be much more adamant that they leave when the fight is over. Lewis will apologize for his reaction previously, and Clementine will either accept or reject his apology. Kenny will reject it no matter what until the fight is over, stating that, had it not been for their help, they'd probably had all starved by now. Clem then looks at Mitch's bomb, and Kenny is impressed by it. Depending on your Mitch's feelings, he will joke, asking Kenny if he's sure he can see it at all, and Kenny will react with a fake laugh. On the other hand, he will tell him that he doesn't care about his opinion, to which Kenny will then clap back, calling him Troy from High School Musical in reference to his "Listen Vanilla Ice" line from Season 2. Clementine will then tell him to stop and ask about the bomb's progress. Mitch will then say that it's going fine. Asim and Willie argue about whether to use the brick or log trap, and Kenny thinks the log is better, seeing how one giant log would do more damage than some bricks in a bag. Clem can decide which is better, or say nothing, in which the group will follow Kenny's choice. Later that night, Kenny and AJ go inside, while Clementine chooses to go with either Lewis or Violet. The same choices as in canon are at play here, with Clem either staying friends, becoming best friends, or entering a relationship with one of them. Instead of the scene ending with them just leaving, Kenny actually walks in on them, asking if Clementine is here. He cuts himself off upon seeing the two and smiling, saying that he sees what's going on. Violet will nervously deny no matter what you chose, and Clem will have the option to deny or insist that this is what he thinks it is. If you chose the option to just be friends, instead of having the option to insist, she will instead say that it could happen eventually. As for Lewis, he won't deny it, instead stuttering and saying that this is awkward. Clem will have the same options. Clementine will then say goodbye and go with Kenny, who tells her that AJ wanted her to join him on watch. On the walk there, he asks her about what was going on back there, and Clem tells him nothing, don't talk about it, or you know what it was. Kenny will laugh, teasing her about how old she's gotten, and he'll then tell her goodbye, and she can say it back, say "see you, old man," or hug him goodbye. Of course, you can stay silent, but he'll just walk away. Clem will then join AJ and have the same interaction as in canon. They will see the cavalry arriving, and will warn everyone. The group will go over their plan, and Omar still gets shot in the leg. Lily arrives, and Kenny and Clem both train their bows on her. Oh yeah, Kenny has a bow, by the way. Imagine Kenny with a bow, that'd be so awesome. Anyway, Lily asks for the new recruits, and Kenny tells her that they aren't hers. Lily has the two soldiers and a couple aim at Clementine and Kenny to make sure they don't move. She then talks, saying leave it to Kenny to start a fight. Maybe that's why Katja and Duck weren't with you. You pick another fight you can't win, and it could be Clementine and that boy next. Kenny will detest her words, and say that he doesn't see her dad anywhere either. Lily will be angered by this, and move on to Clementine, where she talks about how disappointed Lee would be. She taunts the group by talking about Minnie, and this leads to 10 stepping up. Clem and Kenny both tell him to stop, but he goes anyway. This leads to Mitch's death, and Lily's group further charging into the school. Clem, Kenny, and AJ all retreat when Abel throws a Molotov, and Abel is prepared to kill them. Kenny tells him that he won't let him, and the two square off. During this fight, Clem and AJ both help Kenny every now and then by stabbing Abel in the leg. If Ruby stopped treating Kenny, then he would be held outside the window, whereas it would be the opposite if Ruby continued. Clementine pulls Abel off if he is on top of Kenny, and then holds him down before the two fall to the ground. Clementine sees this, and sees Abel's injuries while Kenny is still fine. Lily will then aim her gun at Kenny, and will not hesitate like she did against Clem. Speaking of which, Clementine jumps down onto Lily like she did with Carver, and Lewis/Violet will help Clem fight against her. Clementine will be grabbed by Abel, and Kenny will kick him in the face so he stops. Rosie then bites his arm, and you and Kenny leave him. You then help Lewis/Violet fight off Lily, but she hits them away and begins running. Her group notices the walkers coming and tries to get Lewis and Violet. Clementine will use her bow to try and save one, whereas Kenny will charge in to save the other with a knife due to dropping his bow in the fight with Abel. He stabs him in the shoulder, and Violet/Lewis runs away with him. Lily and her crew then leave. This allows for both Lewis and Violet to be saved instead of just one of them like in canon. The episode then ends with Clem saying that they'll go after Asim and Omar, and the group looking at Abel. Alright, carrying into episode 3, let's go. Episode 3 starts with Clementine and Kenny going into the room where Abel is stuck to a chair. Kenny specifically asks AJ not to come, as he doesn't need to see whatever happens. Clem interrogates him like in canon, and when he asks for a cigarette, showing her the Bible page, Kenny will say that it's a waste of a good Bible. He says that there aren't any left because remember, as Kenny stated in Season 1, he is a Christian man.
I am a Christian man.
And so, upon taking the page, the screen in which he chooses to give it to Abel or burn him with it now has a third option. The option would be to hand it to Kenny and to have him read it. He says that it's a page halfway through Leviticus, so it's basically useless. Clementine then lights it up and burns him or gives him the page. He then gives up the location of the ship before dying either by Clementine or becoming a walker. Kenny and Clem walk upstairs to see AJ listening from behind the doors. The group then goes to check out the ship and comes up with a plan. Clementine says that they could use James to help them by letting them hide among the walkers, and so her, AJ, and Kenny all go to find him while the rest head home. Upon finding him, he tells them that he needs to get his mask and to spare the walkers nearby. And so, while in canon it may be difficult to spare them all, here Kenny helps fight them, and so killing them or sparing them is almost 100% optional with no risk of death. There are way less and it would be way easier for Clem. If she doesn't kill any, Kenny won't either. However, if she kills just one, he will immediately begin killing all the ones he faces. James then takes his mask and gives thanks for not killing any walkers, understands if you just killed some, and is disappointed if you killed them all. In that last choice, Kenny protests against James, saying that they wouldn't spare him if they had the chance. The group would then go to his barn, where he would ask Clem to walk with the walkers and ring the bell. Kenny will say that James is out of his mind, but Clem will do it to make sure they succeed in their plan. She does so and can choose whether or not she thinks there might be something more to the walkers. If she says James might be right, Kenny will be completely surprised and ask her if she's really serious. Clem will then have the option to say nothing, she really thinks so, it could be possible, or nope. Upon saying nothing or nope, Kenny will be relieved. If you say the other two options, he will be at a loss of words. No matter what, the group returns home and leaves James to meet up that night. When the three arrive, they find the group making preparations for a party. This will still go the same, but when Willie says why he was sent there, Kenny repeatedly tries to say something but stutters, and Lewis tries to get off the subject. He and Violet then offer to tell their story, and Clementine has to choose who she wants to hear. If she chooses Violet, Kenny will say that he can relate to having a loved one take their own life. Violet asks if it was before or after, and he says after. She then tells him that she is sorry, and Kenny says it's alright, but he doesn't think people should just give up like that. If you chose Lewis, then Kenny will call Lewis's dad a hypocrite for saying that you could only be rich or happy when he could have used the money to give Lewis piano lessons. This would have made him happy, so his whole lesson doesn't make any sense. Lewis actually agrees. Ruby then asks about Kenny's story before he ended up here with Clem and AJ, and he tells them that when he was around their age, he used to think things were black and white. Like there was a good and bad choice, and he had to always make the good ones. He came to find out that life isn't always that way. Sometimes it's the lesser of the two evils. He continues, saying that he's done a lot of things he regrets, especially after the apocalypse. Maybe if he didn't kill Larry's father immediately, Lily could have left them alone or joined them. On top of that, he should have been strong enough to see the reality and take responsibility for his own son. Then his wife would have been alive. He shouldn't have blamed Clementine for Sarita's death, as she did all she could. And Jane, she was wrong, but so is he. The group then all starts clapping, and Ruby says that is a good wrap. They all then get ready to head out. And I would say that that is a good wrap on this part. So now we are about halfway into episode 3, and so in the next part, we will finish off this series. Hopefully you all have been enjoying it so far, and have watched all the way up until this part, and are ready for the finale, which will definitely be coming soon. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already, and want to see more content like this, and also like this content, obviously. But as always, tell me if you like this part, tell me what you think will happen next,